Ethan had never believed in luck, at least not until the day he found himself stepping onto an alien world. The ship's doors opened, and a wave of strange scents and unfamiliar air greeted him. The sky was not blue, but a deep, shifting violet, streaked with threads of gold that pulsed like living veins. Massive towers spiraled upward, taller than anything on Earth, their surfaces shimmering as though they were alive. The city was full of motion creatures moving with grace and purpose, some with wings, some with limbs that bent in ways human bodies never could. And in the midst of all this, a single figure stood out, tall and radiant, the alien princess. Yalara watched him from her balcony, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the strange sun. Her world was used to fear and caution, but in Ethan's gaze, she saw neither. There was no hesitation, no arrogance, no panic, only calm, quiet courage. For centuries, her people had believed humans were weak, fragile, and indecisive. Most humans who arrived here were diplomats or explorers, usually trembling or eager to please. But Ethan? He walked with steady steps, head held high, a simple human in a place of unimaginable alien power. Something about that simplicity unsettled her. He didn't speak at first. Words were unnecessary. His presence, the way he carried himself, told a story that resonated deeper than any speech could. When he reached the grand balcony, he stopped a few meters from her, bowing slightly, and placed his hand over his heart in a gesture of respect. It was not a bow of submission, nor a request for mercy. It was a silent acknowledgement. The silence hung thick in the air, broken only by the faint hum of the city and the whisper of alien winds. The court around them murmured. Some scoffed, some gasped, some whispered in languages that Ethan could not understand. But the princess remained still, her curiosity growing. Ethan took another step forward. "I am here to learn," he said, his voice soft but steady. "Not to claim, not to command, not to judge." The words were simple, yet in them was a depth the court had never heard from a human before. The council had expected fear, or groveling, or eagerness. Instead, they found clarity and honesty. Yalara tilted her head, intrigued. His voice carried a weight that transcended size, species, or experience. Somehow, this human so ordinary in appearance commanded attention like a living beacon. He looked out at the city around them, his gaze lingering on the streets below. Machines hovered effortlessly, strange creatures moved in coordinated patterns, and lights shimmered in colors he had no names for. Yet he did not flinch, did not falter. Instead, he observed, absorbed, and understood more than most natives did. The princess felt a stirring in her chest, a mix of disbelief and admiration. Humans were supposed to be fragile, predictable. They were supposed to fail. But here was one who did not. The court was restless now. Advisors whispered urgent warnings, telling her that no human could be trusted, that he was likely a spy or worse. But Yalara did not listen. She found herself stepping closer, studying the lines of his face, the determination in his stance. Something primal and honest drew her in, a recognition that this human was different. He carried a quiet strength, a courage that did not shout or boast, but radiated quietly. Steadily, Ethan extended a hand, not in aggression, not in command, but as an invitation. "I hope we can understand each other," he said, and for the first time, the princess felt a flicker of something long absent in her life. Hope. Hope that perhaps, across worlds and species, trust and understanding were possible. And in that moment, Yalara realized that she had never seen anyone like him before. A human, standing tall in a world built to intimidate and dominate, choosing not to bow to fear or custom, but simply to be himself. And for reasons she could not yet explain, it left her completely speechless. The days that followed were unlike anything had ever experienced. The alien city was a living puzzle, full of towering structures, streets that twisted in impossible loops, and creatures that moved with a grace no human had seen before. Yalara's palace was vast, filled with corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly, each lined with lights that pulsed softly as if breathing. For a human, it could have been terrifying, but Ethan moved with calm observation, learning quickly how to navigate this alien world without fear or hesitation. Yalara began to take notice of him in ways she had never expected. He did not act like the humans she had read about or the diplomats her people had encountered. He did not bow to impress, nor did he seek favor through flattery or obedience. Instead, he asked questions. Simple questions, but they carried weight. He asked about her people's fears, their ambitions, and even the parts of their history she had been taught to forget. His curiosity was honest, untainted by arrogance or desire for advantage. The council, however, was not impressed. They whispered constantly, warning Yalara that humans were dangerous precisely because they were unpredictable. "He cannot understand our ways," one elder murmured. "He does not belong here. He will cause disaster." Yalara ignored them, drawn instead to Ethan's quiet wisdom. Something in his simple, straightforward approach resonated with her. A quality rare in her world where decisions were weighed with calculation and fear. One evening, after hours of observation and discussion, Yalara presented Ethan with a choice that would determine his fate and hers. She led him to the top of a tower that overlooked the entire city. The view was breathtaking, spiraling towers, glowing streets, creatures moving like rivers of light, and the sky, forever shifting in hues of violet and gold. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the alien sun, and asked, "You may return to your world, free from obligations. Or you may stay here, become a part of our society, and be a symbol of unity between our species. The choice is yours." Most humans, she knew, would leap at the opportunity to stay. Power, recognition, even comfort, these were things humans sought. Yet Ethan hesitated. He looked down at the city, then back at her, weighing the unseen burdens of such a choice. I cannot decide yet," he said quietly. "I need to understand why it matters, not just what it brings me." Yelara's heart skipped a beat. No human had ever asked that question. Her advisors were aghast. They whispered warnings, claiming he was foolish, indecisive, unfit. But to Yalara, his words were not hesitation, they were clarity. The human was thinking not of himself, not of reward or comfort, but of meaning. And in that moment, she realized that this choice, simple as it seemed, revealed more courage than many had shown in her lifetime. Ethan turned his gaze to the streets below, to the lights and the people moving in coordinated patterns. "Your people. They have built something incredible here," he said softly. "But they also carry fear, traditions that limit them. I do not want to stay just to be part of something beautiful. I want to help it last, to help it grow." His voice was steady, but Yalara could feel the weight of his sincerity. The princess stepped closer, studying him in silence. She had spent her life learning diplomacy, manipulation, and control. But here, in the presence of a human who dared to speak honestly, she felt something unfamiliar, the stirrings of hope. Perhaps this human could see what no one else could, the potential, the truth, and the courage buried in a world too often ruled by fear. As the alien sun began to set, casting long violet and gold shadows across the city, Yalara realized that the choice she had given him was no longer simply about staying or leaving. It was about understanding. It was about trust. And for the first time, she felt a growing certainty that this human quiet, simple, unwavering might just be the one who could change her world forever. The Council of Yelara's people was not content to simply trust Ethan's words. They believed humans were weak, reckless, and prone to fear. So they devised a challenge meant to test his courage, intelligence, and resilience. He would have to retrieve a rare energy crystal from the floating mines that orbited the city, a place considered deadly even for the bravest aliens. Many had tried. None had returned. Yalara watched from the palace balcony as Ethan approached the shuttle that would take him to the mines. She felt a tension in her chest she had never known before. The council murmured warnings around her, predicting his failure, but she could not tear her eyes away. There was something in him, something unshakable, that defied their expectations. The human was not armed with weapons of war, nor did he show any hint of panic. He simply adjusted his satchel, checked his equipment, and stepped aboard the shuttle with a steady stride. The mines were unlike anything on Earth. Jagged rocks, floated in zero gravity, glowing with strange energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. Alien creatures, some with translucent bodies and sharp crystalline limbs, moved silently among the rocks. One misstep could send Ethan tumbling into the void or trigger an attack from one of the guardians, but he did not hesitate. Ethan studied the layout carefully, observing patterns and timing. He moved with precision, avoiding dangerous spikes of energy and floating debris. When he encountered a wounded guardian creature, its body shattered in places but still alive, he did not ignore it. He knelt and spoke in soft, soothing words, using gentle touches to calm it. Slowly, the creature allowed him to pass, even following him as if recognizing his courage and kindness. The alien guards had never seen such an approach, and Yelara's heart swelled with awe. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes to him. Ethan faced traps that required both intelligence and courage, energy beams that could incinerate him instantly, unstable rocks that could collapse beneath his weight, and creatures that attacked without warning. Each obstacle was met with patience, observation, and decisive action. When he finally found the energy crystal, it was lodged deep in the heart of a glowing cavern. He did not seize it recklessly. Instead, he carefully pried it free, avoiding damage to the delicate structures around it. Returning was no easier. The creatures that had initially ignored him now recognized the crystal's importance and moved to block his way. Ethan did not fight with violence. He used his wits, guiding them past traps and calming them when possible. Step by step, he made his way back to the shuttle, the crystal secured, and the guardians following silently. When the shuttle touched down in the palace courtyard, Yallara ran to meet him. Ethan stepped out, scratched and weary, but alive, and not just alive, victorious. In his hands he held the crystal, but more importantly, he had earned the trust of creatures no one had ever reached. The princess felt her heart pound in her chest, a mixture of astonishment and relief. She had seen alien warriors fail. She had seen humans flee. But here was a human who had not only survived, but had succeeded in ways that no one expected. For the first time, Yallara could not find words. The court, too, was stunned into silence. Ethan's quiet bravery, his ability to face danger without fear, and his compassion for living beings, even in a hostile place, had left them speechless. The council could no longer dismiss him as weak, reckless, or unworthy. Yallara felt a deep admiration growing in her chest, an emotion she had not allowed herself in decades. This human, so ordinary in appearance yet extraordinary in action, had proven something that transcended species. Courage was not determined by size, power, or biology. It was determined by choice, by heart, and by the willingness to act when it mattered most. As she looked at him, dusty, tired, and triumphant, Yallara realized that her world, and perhaps her own life, would never be the same. Ethan had shown her something impossible to teach, impossible to demand, a human courage that was pure, unwavering, and utterly compelling. The days after Ethan's trial felt strangely quiet in the palace. The court buzzed with whispers and cautious glances, but Yallara found herself thinking less about politics and more about the human who had faced the deadly floating mines and returned alive. There was something in him that no other visitor, no other warrior, no other diplomat had shown. He moved with calm certainty, as if fear was merely an idea he had chosen not to entertain. And Yallara, for all her power and command, felt an unfamiliar pull toward him. One evening she led him to the palace gardens. Unlike the towering halls and shimmering corridors of the city, the gardens were soft, alive with color and movement. Alien flowers glowed in quiet rhythm, and vines twisted in patterns that seemed almost musical. Strange insects hummed softly, and water flowed in crystal channels that reflected the twilight. Ethan walked beside her, silent, his gaze sweeping over the wonders of the garden. He did not fumble, nor did he act intimidated. He simply observed, as if trying to understand every detail without disturbing it. "Your world. It's beautiful," Ethan said softly, crouching to touch the water of a fountain that pulsed with light. "But I feel it is delicate, fragile in its own way." Yallara studied him. The words were simple, yet honest, thoughtful in a way she had rarely heard from anyone. Humans were supposed to be fragile, but here was one who understood the weight of life, even in a world so alien. His words carried more wisdom than many of her advisors could offer. She laughed quietly, a sound so rare and unguarded that Ethan paused. "You laugh like someone who has been freed from duty, even for a moment," he said. She smiled at the observation, realizing that he spoke truths she had hidden from herself. She had spent years performing as a princess, concealing her fears and doubts beneath layers of protocol. And now, in front of this human, those walls seemed unnecessary, almost absurd. As they walked further, the garden seemed to embrace them. Ethan noticed the smallest details, the curve of a petal, the gentle sway of the light, the quiet energy of creatures moving unseen. He marveled at the intricacy of it all, but never with arrogance or wonder that sought to dominate. Instead, his curiosity was pure, respectful, and unassuming. Yallara felt her admiration for him deepen. He did not simply see the world. He understood it, even in its alien strangeness. They reached a quiet glade where soft light fell across the ground. Ethan stopped and looked at her, his eyes reflecting the glowing flora. "You carry so much responsibility," he said quietly. "And yet, you carry it like a person, not like a title. That's rare." Yallara felt a shiver run down her spine. His words were not flattery. They were an observation, sincere and unwavering. For a moment, she allowed herself to relax fully, feeling a trust she had never known. The bond between them grew without grand gestures or declarations. Words were unnecessary most of the time. A glance, a gesture, a shared smile under the alien light said more than speeches ever could. She felt her loneliness, the one she had carried since childhood, soften. Ethan's presence was like a steady current, calming and persistent, offering a sense of connection that transcended species, language, and worlds. Ethan, too, felt the bond. Despite the alien sky, the towers and creatures unlike anything on Earth, he sensed a clarity here, a truth about courage, honor, and empathy that transcended worlds. Ylera's presence was not commanding or intimidating to him. It was inspiring. For the first time, he realized that trust and understanding could be shared, even across unimaginable differences. By the time the twin moons rose, silvering the garden in gentle light, neither spoke much. Words were unnecessary. They simply walked, side by side, feeling the quiet strength of a bond forming in shared understanding and mutual respect. Something extraordinary had begun, fragile yet powerful. A connection built not by duty or ceremony, but by honesty, courage, and the subtle but undeniable magic of trust. And in that moment, both realized that their world, so different in every way, had found a bridge, one built not of politics or power, but of hearts and choices. The day of the final choice arrived like a storm, heavy and inevitable. Ylera stood at the palace balcony. The violet and gold sky stretched wide above her, and below, the city pulsed with life. The council had gathered in tense silence, their eyes sharp, waiting for the human to make a decision that would shape alliances, power, and the future of their civilization. For them, it was a moment of strategy. For Ethan, it was a moment that would test the core of who he was. The choice was deceptively simple: stay in Ylera's world and become a symbol of unity, a living bridge between humans and aliens, or return to Earth, free from the responsibilities and dangers of a world that could have easily destroyed him. Most humans, the council expected, would stay. The chance for honor, recognition, and safety in a new world was too great to resist. But Ethan's eyes, calm and thoughtful, scanned the city below, then rested on Ylera. He remembered the floating mines, the guardians he had calmed, the perils he had faced, and the quiet bravery of creatures and people alike. He remembered Ylera's eyes that first day, curious, cautious, and waiting to see if he would falter. And in that instant, he understood that this choice was not about glory or reward. It was about responsibility, trust, and heart. He took a slow, deliberate step forward. "I choose to stay," he said, his voice steady, carrying over the soft hum of the city. The council gasped. The advisors murmured, incredulous at the human's words. They had expected flattery, hesitation, bargaining, but not conviction. Ethan held the gaze of each council member in turn. "Not for power, not for recognition, not for ceremony," he continued. "I stay because I have seen what matters. I stay because this world, these people, and this princess deserve someone who will act when it counts, someone who will care enough to make choices that matter, not just follow orders." Ylera's breath caught. For decades, she had been trained to lead with calculation, to weigh options and make choices based on tradition, fear, or duty. She had never expected a human fragile, untested, different in every way, to speak such words with clarity and courage. Her heart pounded as she realized that Ethan had chosen not because it was convenient or safe, but because he understood. He had chosen the harder, braver path, to stay, to act, to commit. The council, stunned into silence, could not dismiss him this time. His choice was not about allegiance, not about power, not about obligation. It was about heart. In that one declaration, Ethan had shown a strength that transcended species, a courage that could not be measured by size, intelligence, or weaponry. It was a human strength, raw, honest, and unshakable. Ylera stepped closer to him, unsure if she should speak or remain silent. Her mind raced with emotion, admiration, relief, hope, and something deeper she had not named before. You understand more than anyone ever could," she whispered. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the awe of seeing someone so ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in action. Ethan smiled faintly, weary from trials but unwavering. "I do not fully understand everything," he said softly, "but I know that what matters is the choice to act, not the ease of the path. I choose to act here with you and for your people." The air seemed to hold its breath. Below them, the city lights shimmered, reflecting the determination in Ethan's eyes. Ylera's chest swelled with something new: hope, wonder, and the unspoken promise of a future neither of them could yet imagine. For the first time, the human and the alien princes stood together, not as visitor and ruler, but as equals bound by courage, trust, and choice. In the heart of that alien city, under the alien sun, a new chapter had begun, a chapter built not on fear, tradition, or expectation, but on the pure, undeniable strength of heart and the decision to stand where it mattered most. And in that moment, Yalara realized that Ethan had done more than choose a path. He had reshaped her world and her understanding of what it meant to be brave, honorable, and alive. The palace was quiet that evening, almost as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Yalara stood on her balcony, gazing out at the city below. The streets shimmered with alien light, creatures moving like rivers of color, yet her attention was fixed entirely on Ethan. He had chosen. He had chosen to stay not for power, not for comfort, not for glory, but because he understood the weight of responsibility and the importance of heart. Yalara had spent centuries learning diplomacy, strategy, and the delicate rules of her court. She had been trained to see humans as weak, unpredictable, and fleeting. Yet here was one who had proven every expectation wrong. The courage he had shown in the floating mines, the intelligence with which he had navigated dangers, and the compassion he had displayed for living creatures. No one else could reach. All of it left her utterly speechless. When he stepped onto the balcony, dust and sweat on his uniform from the day's trials, he did not bow, nor did he speak with arrogance. He simply met her gaze, steady, honest, and unshaken. Yalara's heart pounded in her chest, an unfamiliar mix of awe and vulnerability. She had never felt this way before, not toward a warrior, not toward a diplomat, and certainly not toward a human. You chose to stay," she whispered, the words trembling. "Because it mattered. Not because you were told, not because it benefited you, but because you understood." Her multifaceted eyes reflected a strange mixture of admiration and disbelief. She had never heard a human speak with such clarity of purpose, nor had she imagined anyone could. Her voice faltered as she continued, "I've seen many warriors, many diplomats, but never someone who acts purely because it is right. Never." Ethan's lips curved into a small, weary smile. "I don't always know what is right," he said softly, "but I know what I cannot ignore. And I cannot ignore this, your world, your people, or you." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of conviction. He did not speak to impress her or to sway the council. He spoke because it was true, and in that truth, Yalara felt her chest tighten with a force she could not name. She took a cautious step closer, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her usual composure. The court could see nothing of this, the council too far away, yet she felt exposed in the quiet intimacy of the balcony. You have changed everything," she admitted, voice soft, almost a whisper. "Not just for me, but for everyone who believed humans were weak. You've proven something impossible to prove, and I can't find the words." Her silence lingered, heavy and beautiful. She realized that sometimes words were unnecessary. Actions, choices, and courage spoke louder than any language. Ethan had not only survived, but he had thrived, and in doing so, had shown her that humanity, in all its fragility and unpredictability, could reach heights her people had never imagined. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Yalara's heart swelled with something she had long denied herself: admiration, respect, and an unspoken connection that went far beyond politics or duty. Ethan, standing quietly, met her gaze without flinching, his presence steady and reassuring. Finally she spoke again, softer this time, her voice trembling not with fear but with awe. You've shown me courage, honesty, and heart. I don't know how to respond. I'm speechless." Her words were raw, real, and completely unguarded. For the first time in centuries, the princess of an alien world was truly at a loss. Overwhelmed by something more powerful than protocol, politics, or power, human courage and sincerity, Ethan reached out, offering a hand, not commanding, not insisting, only extending. Yalara hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The gesture was small, yet monumental. In that simple contact, trust, respect, and the promise of a new beginning flowed between them. The city below continued to shimmer, oblivious to the quiet revolution unfolding on the balcony above. A human had chosen with heart and courage, and the alien princess, who had never imagined such honesty or bravery, stood speechless, but changed forever. The morning sun cast a soft violet glow over the city, painting the towers and streets in gentle light. For the first time in decades, Yalara felt a peace she had not known. She walked through the palace corridors, her heart lighter, her mind clearer. Ethan was beside her, moving naturally, quietly, yet with a presence that seemed to steady everything around him. He was no longer just a visitor or a test subject. He was a part of her world now, and somehow, the entire city seemed brighter because of it. The council gathered once more, expecting formal words, protocols, and politics. Instead, Ethan spoke plainly, calmly, and with the honesty that had defined every step of his journey. He did not speak to command or impress. He spoke to share the truth of his choice. "I stay," he said simply. "I stay because I have seen what matters, because I have faced danger and learned courage, and because I have met people who deserve loyalty, trust, and respect. I stay because this is right." Even the council could not argue. His words carried a weight that transcended fear, expectation, or hierarchy. They could see it in his eyes, the same steady, unwavering gaze that had confronted the floating minds, calmed the guardians, and won the quiet admiration of the alien princes. Humanity, fragile as it seemed, had proven itself not through force or power, but through clarity, courage, and heart. Yalara approached him, her own emotions overwhelming the careful mask she had worn for centuries. "You've changed everything," she said softly, her voice trembling with awe and gratitude. "Not just for me, but for my people. You've shown us what courage and integrity truly mean." I don't know if I've ever felt so completely speechless. Ethan smiled gently. "I'm not perfect," he admitted, "but I've learned that courage is not the absence of fear. It's the choice to act even when fear is there. And I choose to act here with you and for everyone who needs it." The princess's eyes glimmered, reflecting a mix of relief, admiration, and something far deeper, an unspoken connection that neither species had ever experienced. For centuries, her people had believed humans were unpredictable, weak, and transient. And yet here he was, proving that the smallest choices could carry the mightiest consequences. His humanity, his empathy, honesty, and courage was reshaping her world. They walked together through the city as it woke, the streets alive with glowing light and bustling life. Creatures that had once eyed humans with suspicion now regarded Ethan with quiet respect, as if recognizing the strength in his heart. Citizens and guards alike paused, sensing the subtle shift he had created, a shift not of domination, but of understanding. A human had arrived, not to conquer, but to inspire, and the city responded in kind. Yalara felt the truth of it settle deep within her. This human, so ordinary and fragile by appearance, had revealed something extraordinary. That strength is not measured by size or weaponry, but by courage, heart, and the willingness to make the right choice, no matter the cost. She looked at him and knew that the future they could build together would be different from anything her people had ever imagined. The palace gardens, the towers, the glowing streets, all of it seemed transformed, brighter, filled with possibility. And in that moment, Yalara and Ethan stood side by side, equals not by birthright or biology, but by choice and courage. They had faced impossible odds, crossed worlds and species, and come through stronger, wiser, and forever changed. The city pulsed beneath them, a living testament to the power of action over expectation. A human had arrived, a human had chosen, and an alien princess had been left completely speechless, not by fear or doubt, but by the astonishing, undeniable strength of humanity. As they looked toward the horizon, Yalara whispered, "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight and promise of his choice. And in that silent agreement, two worlds merged, not through politics, not through force, but through the quiet, unstoppable power of heart, courage, and the human spirit. The sun rose higher, the city shimmered, and a future forged by choice and bravery stretched endlessly before them. Humanity had arrived, and it had changed everything.